Hey everyone, it's John Kraska with EveryLibrary, the EveryLibrary Institute. It is our virtual school visits weeks. Turned from like 1 week into a bunch of weeks. We've been doing these on Tuesdays and Thursdays from in April of 2025 during School Library Media Month in order to have a big conversation with educators and school librarians, parents, administrators, and the American public about what it means to have school visits continue to happen in a very fraught period of the American experience, because kids connect with authors and they connect with themselves as they have these author visits, whether it's in person, coming out and doing a classroom visit or a school assembly, whether it's online and remote. The chance to connect with people who are creators, with artists and writers, the chance to be able to sit down and talk about a story and to tell your own story. These are very much part and parcel the fabric of our education system, and right now they're being highly disrupted by the same forces that are looking to ban books, the same forces that are looking to limit access and censor content. We know very clearly here at EveryLibrary, and I want to put up our information here for everybody who's joining us who isn't totally aware, like we're tripping over your social media feed right now. EveryLibrary is the National Political Action Committee for Libraries. The EveryLibrary Institute is public policy, tax policy, and education policy about libraries. You can find out more about what we're up to at everylibrary.org. We want to have a big conversation right now with two very wonderful authors, Liz Kleinrock and Joanna Ho, both of whom are coming to us live and uncensored here on EveryLibrary Live to talk about the books, and not just these books, but their work over the years. Let me start with the official biographies, and then we'll get into the big chat. So first off, Joanna Ho. Hi, Joanna. Is the award-winning New York Times bestselling author of many children's books, including Eyes That Kiss in the Corners and The Silence That Binds Us. Her debut young adult novel, which received the Young Adult Honor for the Asian Pacific American Award for Literature. Her passion for equity in books and education is matched only by her love of homemade chocolate chip cookies, outdoor adventures, and dance parties with her kids. And that's a new dance partner too for you recently, which is congratulations. And then Liz Kleinrock is an anti-bias, anti-racist educator, author, and consultant. As a Korean-American, queer, Jewish, transracial adoptee, Liz brings a unique perspective to her work, creating inclusive curricula and authoring books like Come and Join Us, 18 Holidays Celebrated All Year Long. She is also the founder of Teach and Transform, advocating for equity in education. And folks, together, Liz and Joanna wrote a book called The Eyes That Weave the World's Wonders. It's really a joy to me. Thank you, Liz, for putting that up on the screen. It's really a joy to me that you already know each other and that you don't have to meet cute here.
Yeah, we have done lots of events together. It's always such a joy to be with Liz, and it's so exciting to be here with you, John.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
Oh, it's a real treat. It's a real treat. I should have done this, but it's hard to read and to hold up books. So what we're going to do here, Joanna, a little bit later is talk about your upcoming book as well as your other works. This one's coming out the day the books disappeared in July of 2025, right?
Yep, July 15th.
Okay, let me talk about this one for 1 second first.
Okay.
So this came in the mail. It's folks. This is one of the coolest things about doing these kinds of events with authors is that you get the book before it's a book. Look at this. It just comes apart in your hands because it's not even a galley. It's like, okay, well, I thought this was going to be about banned books. I thought this was going to be about banned books. And instead it's a book about Arnold, the kid who's the main character, who is actually just learning a little bit about empathy, how to like hang out and not be so selfish about his space. I mean, Joanna, give me a sec. Give our listeners a second about what this forthcoming book's about.
Sure. Arnold is a kid who only likes airplane books, and he discovers he has the power to disappear all the other books of everyone else in the classroom. And then he realizes by accident that includes his own, and he has to sort of figure out how he can make things right, which he can only do by learning about and finding empathy and connection with his classmates and the things that they're interested in. So it is not so subtly very much about banned books and book banning, but hopefully in a way that is very accessible to even the youngest of kids.
No, I think it is too. I mean, to suggest that it's not about that, I don't mean that. But when I started reading it, I was like, wait a minute, she's gonna teach me something. Darn it, I learned something. Yeah. And then Liz, we're going to be talking today also about what Jewish looks like. which is a wonderful book. I learned a tremendous amount immediately in the front section. I'm not culturally Jewish myself. I grew up Catholic, a Catholic kid in the suburbs. Got a little Irish, got a little German, got a little whatever. And I know Sephardic, I know Ashkenazi, but I had no idea about how broad the diaspora was, especially in Asia.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. You say wherever there have been people, you'll find Jewish people too, but they're typically not the stories or histories we get to hear about the most.
No, I want to come back to both of these as we move forward. But one of the reasons we got together for this event is because of both of you have a really good set of relationships around the education community. Both of you do author visits, and yet we have seen a real hesitancy, a real slowdown. We're recording in the middle of April 2025. We're not quite 100 days into the Trump administration yet. And the whole conversation around DEI, the whole conversation around what it means to be neighborly and inclusive has broken down in the United States of America in ways that I think are really terrible. How has the word interface sounds so clinical, but your interactions, that's the word I'm looking for, your interactions with K-12, with new books, old books, with you as somebody who comes out and does those conversations, how's it changing right now?
Do you want to start, Liz?
Yeah, Liz, why don't you go first?
Sure. So I actually work in a school full time. I'm the director of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging at a school in DC. And our youngest kids are 2.5, and we go to 8th grade. Mm-hmm. And so I will say that I'm in a really privileged position that we joke that my school is like a bubble within a bubble. Like my school community is really progressive and like a pretty left-leaning city as well. So I do feel very lucky that I'm in alignment values-wise with most people in my community. And I also travel and I consult and I speak a lot in different parts of the country too. And right now there's a sense of fear and anxiety that people who I know deeply believe in the importance of representation and diversity and affirming different identities and histories and being honest with children about where our country and our world has been and where we have the potential to go. Are fearing for their jobs, are not sure that if they choose one particular book, what might happen to their job security. If one student goes home, reports to an adult, we read this particular book in class, and the person who receives that information takes steps to contact the administration, contact local government. You're never just really quite sure what's going to happen. So I see people who perhaps not have changed their views or values, but are just really unsure about the way to go about this right now, which is really, really unfortunate because I know, and I'm sure Joanna knows too, from these visits, when you connect with students who see themselves mirrored in your stories for the very first time potentially, and how beautiful that is, the fact that those experiences might not happen for kids is really heartbreaking.
Joanna, what are you seeing out there right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's really similar. So I am also an educator by background. I was an administrator at a high school for a long time. I haven't done that for a couple of years, but I understand education. I know the system really well. And as an author, I have this beautiful space where I typically get to parachute into a school or an organization for a day or for a few hours and share stories, share about the power of our voices and our stories, and maybe talk very specifically about a book. And I can say, like, numerically, just by comparison, last year I had 18 school or organization visits from January to June. This year I had 4, and all of them were for private schools or like private organizations, reading organizations. And so that's just like a numerical glimpse for all of us. And I am not even an author whose books have been really visibly targeted, but across the board, there has been a very fearful, chilling effect on book purchases and book and school visits. And I think it goes very much to what Liz is talking about. There is a sense of fear. There is so much in an educational landscape and a day in the school that teachers and administrators have to contend with, have to navigate, that adding one more thing that could potentially create controversy or conflict or distract from learning, even though this thing is something that will enhance learning and be a really powerful, growing experience for an entire community. I can see authors and I mean, I'm sorry, I can see educators just choosing a slightly easier path because the path that they're walking is already one that is so fraught and challenging. But as a result, students are missing out on incredible learning opportunities and ways to see themselves in the curriculum and feel belonging and empathy at school for themselves, and also a chance to humanize those that they go to school with or those that they don't have the opportunity to see at their schools.
I mean, I have to imagine that doing school visits is a way it's something that's really enriching for you as authors. I mean, I know two books that I've been a part of, myself and my colleague Patrick. We wrote 2 books. They're very wonky. They're very much about libraries and politics. They're great. Yeah, they're great for our marketplace. And I love nothing more than getting up in front of an audience and talking about it. I do. I love it. And yet, I being disinvited, being disenfranchised, they're not returning your calls. I mean, being cut off from your audience like that must be hard.
Yeah. Oh, it's so hard. I think it's hard. Sorry, Liz, I just jumped in. I think it's hard because that the reasons that it's happening. So for both Liz and I can speak for myself, so in addition to the school visits going down, I've also been invited and then canceled from a school visit just days before I was supposed to fly across the country to do this school visit. So that's sort of a long story, but essentially what happened is a week, 5 days before I was supposed to fly to New York, they reached back out to my agent and said they didn't want me to come. They were, very nebulous about wanting to honor the contract. And after a lot of back and forth, I essentially was not allowed to go to the schools. They set up a separate visit in a public library during school and work hours, didn't tell anyone, not even the librarian. So I flew across the country to go present to an empty room. And there were some retired teachers or people who had slowly started to hear what had happened. And then part of that is, for me, that was even more painful. In addition to the idea that I wasn't able to go and reach out to many of these students, talking about stories that have universal impact and power about the importance of raising your voice and creating change, is I found out that the visits themselves were funded by a local Chinese organization, and the Chinese organization fully capitulated as well. Instead of fighting for this opportunity for an author that they had sponsored to come out, they yelled at my agent. So I think it's so many layers of people being afraid, people being too scared to speak out, of not only being too scared, but fully on the other side of silencing other voices that they don't necessarily agree with. And in a school, what I think is so sad, in addition to what we've already mentioned about seeing yourselves in books, learning about other people, is I think that schools are spaces where we should be able to learn many different opinions and perspectives and learn how to dialogue and question and each other. And the school is one of the safest and best places to do that. So if in a school we're just silencing people who may have a perspective that we may not understand or disagree with, then you're just taking away that opportunity for dialogue and discussion and understanding and grappling of new and different ideas and uncomfortable ideas potentially. You're taking that away from our youngest of people, which is how we get to a society where we are unable to have those conversations in private or in public at all.
Yeah. Liz, has your experience with this sort of deplatforming, the disinvitations, they're not taking your calls, has it changed your approach as a writer, or are you standing on your through line and going for it still?
I wouldn't say it's changed my writing, but I'll admit that the way that I might try to package or market it or try to explain it to other people might shift a little bit. But I guess I think of it kind of like how we used to talk about global warming and now we talk about climate change, even though it's the exact same thing. I would like to not do that though. But I do think that I'm learning more about wanting to weave in all of these different themes. So I'm not compromising my values, but perhaps the way in which I'm incorporating them into stories might look a little bit different than where I was a few years ago, which it seemed more socially acceptable to just kind of hit people over the head with it. which I think can have like its pros and its cons as well. But to like build also on what Joanna was talking about, what I've also seen is that I haven't had clients directly cancel in the same way that Joanna has, but my invitations are coming with a lot more like asterisks now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Past, I think there was a lot of goodwill and a lot of trust of like, this school, this organization, we're familiar with your writing and your work. We love to have you come. And it's because we're familiar with what you do, we want you to be here. And now there are multiple pre-meetings that need to be had of, what are you going to talk about? Can we see your entire slide deck? Can we give you feedback on this? Can we have a full on like copy of like the speech that you're going to give? We would really love it if you tried not to use this particular terminology, if you stayed away from, these ideas or concepts, or you might get a question about this. We really don't want you to answer in this particular way. So it feels like kind of like this step before, like, we don't want you here, to we want you here, but you need to be packaged in a very particular way that fits in line with what's going to make other people feel as comfortable as possible, and what's also going to avoid any potential backlash or repercussions on our parts. And like, while to a certain extent I do understand that, if you're going to be that nitpicky, just do it internally then. Like, don't bother having somebody come in from outside.
That you both are authors who, and as co-authors together, I mean, you tell good stories that are true stories about human beings. And the fact that you have to sanitize that, how did that become controversial? Okay, great. I mean, neither of you come on mic for that. It's a shrug of the shoulders, and it's a shake of the head. I don't know either.
I think it's like a long, very intentional. I mean, I think we all know, like, it's a long, very intentional, systemic erasure of stories, erasure of histories, of like language and images and rhetoric that over and over dehumanizes people who aren't like white, male, straight, in the dominant narrative that
I know. We're the worst. We're the guys I went to high school with. That's who I blame.
Yeah, I think
because I'm okay, right? I mean, and I'm not being flip here. Like, the fact that we can do something here at EveryLibrary to lift up and to center is the best thing I can do personally and professionally right now.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, we're so appreciative of the space, but I think to your previous question, that's how it happens, to the point where taking out these stories, it's like, it's something that we shouldn't even question. Like, of course, we need to hear and learn about all humans and all of our experiences, but to create a space where so many have been not only dehumanized, but made portrayed as being threatening and dangerous. Then it's a safety issue, and then suddenly it makes it okay to, erase and do all the cancel and all these things without question.
That's right. Liz, I'm sorry, you were going to say?
Oh, just, I think a severe lack of curiosity, like, as an overall society, unfortunately, when something comes up that, I don't know, makes us feel a certain way or sparks something that we realize we didn't even know, instead of asking ourselves, am I having this reaction, or is there something I need to learn? The cognitive dissonance just kicks in really, really hard. Kind of, we'd prefer to just sweep everything under the rug than actually confront anything head on. And I also think as a society, we really just struggle with this idea of being able to hold like multiple true things at the same time too. That just because somebody is telling a story and their lived experience and opinion is so different than mine, doesn't mean that it should invalidate theirs. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't have the space or the ability to tell their story if they want to. Because it's really only by like piecing together this whole tapestry that we actually can figure out ways to improve the world that we're living in. How do we actually make it better? How do we avoid repeating the exact same mistakes of the past over and over again?
I really appreciate you sharing with me about this as authors, as educators, as people, and the direct impact on it. I want folks to feel more comfortable inviting you back. I want schools to and school librarians to be like, yep, let's do it. let's get back to it. But I want them also to learn a little bit more about your books too. So if you don't mind, Liz, I want to talk a little bit about this one first. What Jewish looks like. First off, the illustrations in here are fantastic, and I know they're not yours. So you're an illustrator. Yeah, I mean, they're very accessible, and they're not photorealistic at all, but they are very much about the people, who are in the conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was it? Why this book? This book is the least Eurocentric book about Judaism I've ever read.
Thank you.
Yes.
So What Jewish Looks Like, which is co-written by Caroline Cusin Pritchard, who is the Venn diagram center of also of the book that you just highlighted that's coming out with Joanna soon as well. We love Caroline. She's amazing. If she's watching, hi, we love you.
Yes.
So I am Jewish. And I think that for most people, if I asked you to envision someone who is Jewish, someone who looks like me is not going to be the face that comes to top of mind. And growing up, and even to this day, I experienced a lot of tension, honestly, a lot of racism, both outside the Jewish community, also within the Jewish community, because people had a lot of assumptions about who Jewish people are and what Jews look like and where we come from and what we believe, and a lot of that frustration. So even the title itself, What Jewish Looks Like, came from being asked so many times growing up, or being told well, you don't look Jewish. Well, I am, and I don't really know what to say beyond that. And so this book is really meant to help readers of all different faiths and backgrounds really interrogate their assumptions about Jewish people. I hope that it engages people in both the learning and the unlearning process.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are 36 Jewish people. It's a biography collection of Jews from history, from present day, from all around the world, who are diverse in every sense of that word when it comes to identity. It was really fun to research. It was really wonderful to co-write. And Iris Gottlieb, our illustrator, did an absolutely phenomenal job.
Well, I think that also you begin the book with the big questions. What is an ethno-religion? Are Jews a race? Are Jews white? What is anti-Semitism? What is the diaspora? And I appreciate you centering those big questions, because what you're trying to answer here, to me, is biographies of people that I might not know, which I really appreciate. I knew a few of the figures in here, but the idea that it's more than what we see maybe on TV, or what we know just from casually living in the suburbs. What did you learn, though, while you were doing this book that was either surprising or delightful?
Just some of the biographies, the lives of some of the people in there. Ruby Myers was one of the first people I researched, who was one of the most famous silent film actresses in India. I had never heard of her before. I had honestly grown up thinking that I was maybe the only one out there, the only Asian Jewish person, and then I would just kind of be this, I don't know, unicorn, and one day maybe I'd find someone else who was kind of similar. And then you learn that there's this really expansive, thousands of year old history that you've never been taught before. I really loved learning about August Bondy. He's the second bio in the book, who is Austrian, presented as white, staunch abolitionist, fought in the Civil War when he didn't need to. His home was a stop on the Underground Railroad. I wish I had more examples of people like that growing up. So really the purpose of this book was to write something that I wish I had had as a child.
Mm-hmm. Now, you do talk about the cultural intersection points of holidays and celebrations, religious celebrations, and also sort of the everyday domestic religion, if you will. Did you find that there was commonalities across those different? I mean, whether it's the Latin America or Sephardic and Ashkenazi to the East Asian, or are there variations to it that you find to be true but still Jewish?
Yeah, I mean, I call it same but different. We all originated from the same place historically, that we all use the Torah, the Talmud, the Hebrew Bible. that there are traces and aspects of the Hebrew language in all of us too. We celebrate the same holidays. There's variation in sometimes how those holidays are celebrated and the foods that are eaten. But like one memory that really stood out as I was writing this is, I think I was in like early high school or so. I took a trip to Italy with my parents, and my parents, I joke, but like it's kind of true that I call it like let's find like the Jewish history, or like let's find like the synagogue or somewhere, anywhere we go. I was so salty about being taken to Shabbat services in Italy. Like I did not
While
want
you're on vacation. Yeah, that's just,
yeah, not into it. But I remember my dad telling me like, how cool is this? Like some of it's in Italian, some of it is in Hebrew. But no matter like where you are in the world, like our people have been saying the same prayers like for thousands of years. They could go back in time machine, 200 years, 500 years, the prayers would be the same. And we're still like, you know, keeping those traditions, those practices alive to this day. And like how beautiful that is, like anywhere in the world. And I was just like, wow, that's really powerful. I don't think I appreciate it at the time, but as an adult, I appreciate it a lot now.
Yeah, youth's wasted on the young, all those good trips, So Liz, I apologize for not putting up to the cryon before, and I want people to connect with you. Teachandtransform.org. Not only your writing, but also some of your DEI consulting too, I would think, right?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. So let me bring in Joanna here a little bit too. So I want to talk to you about your intersection point here with Carolyn Pritchard. I did not realize I should have, and I'm, but why isn't she on today?
We would love to have her on another time too.
Oh, yeah, make that happen. So,
yes.
Yeah. So this, you mentioned that we did touch on in the beginning, what this book is and is not, and is about, book bans and such. And you got me. As I was reading it, I thought, oh, okay, I this is a book about empathy. And then I was like, oh, you did it. How's it being, let me rephrase, because this is coming out in July. Why the metaphor here?
That's a great question. So it started off in the first iteration that I wrote was like a very on the nose book about book banning. Like somebody banned a book at a school and a kid and their classmates rose up. And it was so didactic and on the nose and frankly terrible draft. And I told it to Caroline, who is, as we mentioned, a really dear friend of both of ours.
Yes.
And I'm a brilliant writer. And she like hacked it up. And then she kept texting me like all these ideas, like, well, what if this or what if this? And then she's like, what if he poofed away all the books like book banning, but in an actual story, Joanna? And it was such a brilliant idea that you should write that with me. So we ended up writing it together, which I think just makes it a much stronger story. I think that's actually something, side note, I'm working on as an author, because like Liz was saying, I think my earlier books are very social justice oriented and a little more on the nose. And I would love to explore writing stories that center, I do feel like they center story, but even more so center the story, and then through the story, learning whatever it is you pull out of the story. And so this was a great exercise. And I think there are so many parallels. We were really intentional, like, okay, well, why do book banners do this? And what about people who fight back? And what's the point? And what do people learn? And we tried to weave all of that into the story itself. So there are, I think, if you really map it out, a lot of one-to-one parallels. But I think that as a story, people always say people listen to stories and not facts. And I think that that's really true. And so hopefully in a story format that centers the story and centers the characters, it allows an easier entry point to have those conversations in a safer way that's not pointing fingers at anyone but fictional characters, but then allows us as at any age to then draw connections to what's happening in real life and hopefully empower us to speak out or help us question why we feel like we need to cancel books at all or things we don't agree with at all, because the story helped bridge whatever resistance we have or fear we have that prevents us from doing it otherwise.
Well, your books like Eyes That Kiss in the Corners, the
Silence That Binds Us.
That Binds Us. Thank you. Yeah, racism, suicide, truth to power. There is the fact that the children in these books are able to speak truths and come around to things that parents at school board meetings that parents and adults, full-fledged adults at library board meetings, I mean, the idea that we shouldn't be silencing each other's stories is so basic. And that the idea that if you do that to somebody else, it's going to come around and bite you in the butt, you know? I mean, like, those are lessons that every child should learn, but every adult should remember.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this idea like of a story silencing, biting us in the butt. I mean, I hope that that's what happens. I hope that people whose stories are being silenced, like that we are rising up and speaking out and showing up at those meetings. And my hope is that stories like the ones that Liz and I are writing, and so many other authors and creators are writing, or people who are speaking out. My hope is that those stories inspire people to rise up, do the biting in the butt. But sometimes the biting in the butt happens like it did to Arnold, where you realize you're hurting yourself when you're hurting other people. And I just wish that it didn't have to make that long road where something affects you before you realize the horrific nature of the thing you were doing.
Yeah, we can all hold on to that little bit of hope, Joanna. Yeah. All right, we're coming around. I need to ask you the closing question. Okay. It's a question that's a hard question for me to ask because of where we are. It's not even 100 days yet under the Trump administration, and yet, if you could tell that school administrator, that nervous sponsor, that person who's not returning your email, if you could give them a little bit of courage to say yes to yourselves as an authors to come out to visit, or other authors who are supposed to be having conversations with these students, what would you want to tell them?
You know, I think I don't know any educators, and maybe this is naive of me. I don't know any educators who get into this line of work because we don't care deeply about children, and because we don't care about wanting to create a world or help them create a world for themselves that's better than what we're currently experiencing. So I suppose, like, on a very simple level, I would ask if banning books, if preventing children from accessing these stories, does that hurt or does that help your goal? Does that hurt or does that help young people? And I would just leave it at that.
That's a great question, Liz, and it shouldn't be rhetorical. Thank you for sharing that. Joanna, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's something that I've thought about a lot, is just really similarly. I think that anyone who's in education has made tremendous sacrifice because they have some kind of compass internally that tells them what they value in its students and its learning and its humanity, for the vast majority of educators that I know, and I think for those that I don't. And it's just that it's our job as educators to serve students first. And it's so easy for that to get lost amongst all of the different stakeholders and pressures and things and decisions that have to be made, but that it's in student, like, as an educator, as a school leader, students first is the most important thing. So having students have access to stories, to empathy, to questioning, to curiosity, and ultimately to dialogue, like opening spaces to question and have dialogue. That's our job as an educator. Everything else is noise. And so to encourage educators to remember that's why we're here, and to create and to protect those spaces in our schools. And however hard it is for us personally, like, we have to be the buffer against the world, and the choices we make now are showing and teaching our students the things that we're paying lip service to in school, but we have an opportunity to show through our own actions and choices now.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Can I add something also?
Of course.
Also, especially with the access that children and students now have to technology, if a kid is interested in something, if they want to read something, learn about it, they will. With or without you, they will. And ultimately, book banning, censorship, all of these things ultimately will just end up with young people putting less and less faith in education, less trust in their educators and their teachers and their leaders. We've certainly seen that. When I encounter students who are learning something about history that they've never learned before, they get angry. They want to know why they've never learned that, why no one has ever talked about it before, and the outrage of what it takes to have to go and educate yourself because some adult out there wasn't comfortable enough to just offer you a book or answer a question, or even just say, I don't know the answer to that question, let's figure it out. That damage is really, really hard to undo. And so while preventing access from one book might feel like something really small, it's representative of something a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we have solved the problems of the world if we would just take that lesson, those two lessons to heart. Liz, Joanna, thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to put up your books one more time. The Day the Books Disappeared by Joanna Ho. Again, metaphor that will surprise your children as well as your adults like me. And What Jewish Looks Like by Liz Kleinrock. We will bring Carolyn Pritchard in for a solo event, and we'll talk.
Yes, she's brilliant.
Me and her, we'll just talk about the two of you. Okay? Thanks for being part of this again today. I really appreciate it. You're both lovely people.
Thank you so much, John.
Absolutely. I'm going to put up the closing card, and I'm going to hit stop, and we're all going to wave at the audience.
Sounds great.
All right. Cheers.